At exactly 3:07 a.m., every monitor in the hospital flatlined. Every patient died in perfect sync. Except one. She never blinked. She never moved, and she never should have been alive. Now the hospital is sealed. Time loops. People vanish. Something ancient, buried in its walls, is waking up. This isn't just a haunting. It's a ritual that never ended. Dr. Lena Ward was supposed to save lives. Instead, she's trapped in a nightmare no one else remembers. And each night she's the only one who doesn't die. This is her story. And it's not over. Part 1. The shift begins. I started my shift at Hollow Pines Medical Center just before midnight. The parking lot was soaked in mist, the kind that clings to the ground like it's afraid to rise. No sirens, no ambulances. It's just a heavy silence, pressing against the walls of the ER like a held breath inside. The air was different to still, too cold, like someone had turned the hospital into a walk-in freezer. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally. Nothing new in an underfunded building like ours, but the rhythm of the flickering felt ... off, like a heartbeat with an irregular pulse. The night staff moved slower than usual. Murmurs between nurses stopped when I walked by. Their eyes were redrimmed, like they hadn't slept. Like they'd all seen something they weren't ready to talk about. No patients in the waiting room, no calls on the intercom. Not even the usual midnight drunk stumbling in with a cut lip and a cigarette behind his ear. It was ... quiet. Hollow. I had just started reviewing charts when the door slid open with a hiss. 2 paramedics wheeled in a stretcher, their faces pale, lips tight. They didn't say a word, just rolled the patient to room 306 and left without so much as filling out intake forms. I caught a glimpse of her as they passed. She couldn't have been older than 30. Blonde hair matted with dirt, dried blood streaked across her temple. No ID, no name. Just Jane Doe scrawled on the clipboard in someone's hurried handwriting. I examined her vitals, stable but strange. Her heart rate was locked at 61 BPM, didn't move, didn't shift, no matter what I did. Her pupils reacted to light, but she didn't blink, not once. Timed it. 2 minutes, 5:10. Still, no blink. She stared at the ceiling like she was watching something the rest of us couldn't see. I checked her records, there were none. No history, no address, no contact info. It's just a single note from the paramedics. Found unconscious on chapel steps, breathing on arrival. Eyes open. I tried speaking to her, asked if she could hear me. Nothing. Her mouth twitched once like the beginning of a smile. But her eyes never moved. As I turned to leave the room, I glanced at the wall clock. 3:06 a.m. Something about the second hand caught my eye. It jerked instead of gliding. And it was ... lagging. The minute hand ticked. But the second hand stalled in place, as if refusing to cross into the next moment. I walked back to the nurses' station. The monitors were still humming, screens lit with vital signs from every room, each little green line dancing along like normal. But the silence was heavy now. Not just quiet dead. No coughs. No footsteps. No voices, just the low hum of electricity, stretching like a nerve pulled too tight. Then it happened. 3:07 a.m. Every monitor went flatline. All of them, simultaneously. A wall of alarms screamed through the ER. One after another, rising into a deafening chorus of death. I ran to the closest patient room 302. Mr. Halverson, diabetic, recovering, alive. Hours ago, he was still. No pulse, no breath. I called out for help. No one answered. I checked the next room. Same. I sprinted from bed to bed, slamming the code buttons, grabbing crash carts, trying to revive anyone. Everyone. Nothing worked. No heartbeats. No signs of life. Not even the staff. The nurses' station was empty. Computers frozen. Phones dead. The overhead lights buzzed, then dimmed, then flickered into darkness, and in the middle of it, all room 36. I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped she'd gone too, that this was some kind of massive power failure. A nightmare brought on by exhaustion and bad hospital coffee. But she was still there, lying perfectly still, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, and then she blinked once, slow, deliberate. Like she knew she was the only one left. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. And then she smiled. Part 2. No way out. The alarms didn't stop. They screamed through the ER like a banshee. Every monitor frozen in that endless flat line. Every hallway soaked in red from the emergency lights. I tried the main phone at the nurse's station, dead. No dial tone, just static. I picked up the wall intercom, tried paging any department. Nothing. The screen blinked once, then turned completely black. I tried my cell phone. 1 bar. I dialed 911. It rang once, then twice. Then, I heard my own voice, playing back at me. It was something I'd said earlier that night, something ordinary, something harmless. Patient's BP is holding. Keep fluids going at 150 milliliters per hour. Then it repeated. Same tone, same words, same. Pause. But this time something whispered over the top of it. Something wet. I hung up. Down the hall. I saw Alex, our respiratory tech, leaning into a doorway, calling out for someone. When I reached him, he turned, eyes wide. Where is everybody? He whispered. The ICU's empty, like completely empty. Beds still warm. We headed back to the security office, hoping to check the cameras. We needed answers. We needed to know if anyone had left the building. The door was ajar. Inside. Every screen was showing static. 1 or 2 flickered and pulsed with dark shapes. But I couldn't make anything out. I moved closer and hit rewind on the recording from room 36. The Jane Doe's room. She was lying there, still silent, staring, then. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the video cut out. When it came back, the bed was empty, but she was still there, standing in the corner, facing the wall. No movement, no sound, just the back of her head. Frozen in grainy black and white. Alex stepped closer to the monitor and it turned off. We heard the elevator chime. 1 floor up. Then again, 1 floor down. Then again. But no one had pushed the button. We stepped into the hallway. The lights flickered again, longer this time, and when they returned, the signage on the wall had changed. What had been West Wing Oncology now read East Wing Maternity. We hadn't moved, but the hospital had. Alex swore under his breath and bolted for the emergency exit at the end of the hall. I followed. He pushed through the double doors and down the stairs. I heard each footstep echo, but when I reached the bottom, he wasn't there, just the same door we'd come through. Same hall. Same flickering lights. I went back up. The stairwell turned in on itself, floor after floor that made no architectural sense. I ended up on the psych warden area that had been closed for years. Every door was open, every bed empty. Except for 1. In the far room. A wheelchair sat facing the wall, faint creaking as it slowly turned. No one was in it, but there were indentations on the seat. Fresh ones. I turned and sprinted back the way I came, only to find the hallway behind me wasn't there anymore. Just a mirror. A hospital mirror, full length, covered in age and handprints. My reflection wasn't moving. I stood still, so did it. But then it smiled, and I didn't. I backed away. The lights above popped one by one as I moved. The whispering returned closer this time. Too many voices layered over each other, speaking words I couldn't make out. Children, men, women, all speaking at once. Their sounds pressed through a meat grinder. I found a door labeled Main Exit. I pushed through it, heartbeat hammering, lungs aching. But when I came through, I was back in the ER. Same chairs, same blood pressure cuffs, same ticking clock above the nurses. Station 3:07 a.m., frozen. I walked to the front doors, glass, automatic. I waved my badge. Nothing. They didn't even acknowledge my presence behind me. I heard the elevator chime again, dot ding dot. I turned, and the Jane Doe was standing just beyond the ER. Doors, dot barefoot, dot gown, covered in dried. Blood, dot eyes fixed on me, dot smiling, dot the building around me breathed. The vents hissed, the walls pulsed, and I realized, then this wasn't a hospital anymore. It was a body, and I was inside it, and it had just woken up. Part 3. The disappearing the janitor was the first to go. His name was Dennis. Big guy, always humming old jazz under his breath, always wore the same patched up Red Sox cap like it was part of the uniform. I saw him just after the second wave of power flickers. He was mopping near the ER bathrooms, muttering about how the lights kept blinking wrong. I stepped into the supply room 2 minutes tops. I came back out, he was gone. Not just gone like he'd gone on break. It's gone like he was never there. Mop handle resting against the wall. Floors still wet, but no Dennis. I checked the staff. Bored, his name was missing. Even the logbook we use for clock and zit skipped from 11:49 p.m. straight to 12:03 a.m. Like those 14 minutes didn't exist. Then Priya came running down the hallway, her shoes slapping the tile like gunshots. She was pale, wide-eyed Lena. She said, "Nina's gone." Nina was our ER nurse. Just 30 minutes ago, she was restocking trauma kits. Now, her station was empty. No notes, no coffee cup. Her locker was open and empty. No clothes, no name tag, dust. I pulled up the digital staff directory. Her name flickered on the screen, then vanished. I ran a search for her badge number. No results. I wasn't imagining this. People were vanishing, and the hospital was erasing them like they were never here. That's when Marcus found us. He looked shaken. He'd been downstairs trying to find a generator panel. Said he heard someone breathing behind him, but when he turned around, no one was there. Just the sound of fingernails dragging slowly across metal. We barricaded ourselves in the ER conference room, pulled out our phones, our laptops, tried every system access point we could think of. Every file tied to the Jane Doe came up corrupted. No blood work, no scans, no fingerprints. Even her EKG was blank. Not just flatline, just gone. As if her body didn't register as organic, but she was breathing. We watched her chest rise and fall through the glass window. She hadn't moved since she arrived. Her eyes hadn't closed once. I asked Marcus to check the vents. Maybe there was some kind of gas leak, something making us hallucinate. He climbed onto the counter, unscrewed one of the intake panels. Cold air rushed out, foul and sweet, like dead flowers rotting in a sealed jar. Then he froze. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just leaned closer to the vent. "Marcus," I said again. Louder, he whispered. "It's saying my name." And then the light above him burst on in that half second of darkness. Something shifted in the room. And when the lights came back, Marcus was gone. Not a sound, not a trace. His footprints in the dust ended at the vent. Priya screamed, grabbed her hand and ran. The halls weren't familiar anymore. Every turn felt wrong. Every wing had signs that didn't match. West Pediatrics pointed in 3 directions. The hallway stretched and narrowed like a tunnel. One moment and snapped back to hospital proportions the next. Then we saw it, a smear of blood along the tile floor. Long and thin, like something had been dragged. It wasn't there a moment ago. It led to a stairwell we didn't recognize. No door number, no exit signs. We hesitated, and then the lights flickered once. Twice on every bulb in the hallway shattered at once. We took the stairs, the blood trail followed us down, slick and fresh, turning from a smear into something more deliberate. Like someone was dragging their fingers along the walls. The stairs twisted longer than they should have. We passed more landings than the building was supposed to have. Sub-basement after sub-basement, each one darker than the last dot. Then we found it, an old metal door. Rusted, bent, it looked untouched for decades. No security key, just a handle. That screamed when I turned it. Beyond. It was a corridor of pale green tile and soft, humming lights that shouldn't have been working. The walls were lined with doors, steel doors, each marked with patient. Numbers, no names, no labels. And every one of them slightly ajar. The place smelled of bleach and mold. And something else, something alive. We stepped forward, and I felt it immediately. The temperature dropped, my breath fogged the air, and from somewhere far down that hallway, I heard a voice that didn't echo, didn't move, just hovered there. Weightless and cold, it said. You weren't supposed to find this. Priya grabbed my arm, but I couldn't move, because I realized something this wing wasn't on. Any blueprint. It wasn't listed on the hospital records, no maps, no mentions. This was the original foundation and whatever they buried here. Ted started to wake up. Part 4, the anchor. The hallway went on far too long for a hospital that shouldn't have had a basement like this at all. PRIYA, and I walked in silence, guided only by the sickly yellow light strips embedded in the floor. The walls were slick, with condensation. Every few feet, another steel door stood half open, as if daring us to look inside. Most rooms were empty, rotting gurneys, rusted tools, restraints still fastened to ancient beds. One room had scratch marks on the ceiling. Another had the remains of old speakers mounted on every wall, as if sound itself had once been used as a form of control. We reached the end of the corridor, where a double door with no handle loomed like a sealed tomb. But when I brushed my fingers against it, it creaked open slow, reluctant. Inside was a library. Or what was left of one. Books rotted to pulp on the lower shelves. Mice scurried in the corners. A massive desk stood in the center of the room, and behind it, shelves lined with leather-bound journals stacked in meticulous rows. Each one marked with the same name, hand-inked on the spine, Dr. Howard Greaves. I opened the top journal. The writing was jagged, frantic, smudged in places, burned in others. One entry caught my eye immediately. We flatlined patient 43 at 3:07 a.m. She stayed under for 4 minutes. Vital signs gone. Then the eyes opened, black as pitch. She spoke a language we didn't know. 3 nurses quit that night. The orderly who stayed hanged himself before morning. Page after page, he recorded attempts to delay death, to pause the process, to stretch the final breath like taffy. Every experiment timed precisely to 3:07 a.m. He called it the veils. Weak point. That single minute where death could be negotiated or denied, but what returned was never fully human again. Each patient came back screaming, not in pain, but in rage. In hunger, I turned another page and froze. A photograph, black and white. Faded, a woman strapped to a gurney. Eyes wide, mouth open. Mid-scream. The caption read, Patient 43. Recovered 3:07 a.m. UNCONTAINABL. It was her, the Jane Doe. Same face, same eyes, same cruel, faint smile. Priya leaned over my shoulder. That's impossible, she whispered. But she knew it too. The cheekbones, the scar above the left brow. Identical. The photo was dated. Toa was dated 1891. I looked back at the door, at the very architecture. This wasn't a basement. This was the original building. The asylum came first. The hospital was just built on top of its bones. Priya found more journals, each one filled with symbol circles within circles, spirals. Anatomical sketches with mouths drawn inside, hearts and eyes scratched out in every figure. We spread them out across the desk. There was one phrase repeated again and again, written in crimson ink across margins and titles. One must anchor her. Without the anchor, she wanders. She isn't anchored, she consumes. My pulse quickened. I didn't know what that meant, an anchor. Was it physical? A person? A ritual? Was that what was happening now? Had the Jane Doe returned because someone failed to anchor her this time? I didn't have time to ask the next question. Priya dropped the book she was holding and let out a strangled gasp. She clutched her chest, her eyes rolled back, and she fell. Her limbs began convulsing. Legs thrashing against the floor, fingernails scraping against tile hard enough to bleed. I dropped to her side, tried to hold her down, but her body bucked like it was trying to escape itself. And then she stopped. Mid-arch.mid-spasm. Frozen, her. Eyes opened, and they were pitch black. She turned, her head toward me too slowly, too precisely, and smiled. Not like Priya, not like someone in pain. It was her smile. Jane Doe's smile. And when her mouth opened, it wasn't her voice that came out. It was a second voice layered over hers, like two people trying to speak through. The same throat dot, it said. "She remembers you, doctor." Then Priya collapsed, gasping. Her color returned. Her eyes cleared. She looked up at me, crying, shaking. "She's inside," she whispered. "Oh, she's inside the walls." Something shattered in the distance, then a long, low groan echoed through the corridor. Outside, like metal twisting or lungs filling with air for the first time in a very long time. I looked down at the journal. Still in my hand, the last entry had no date, no patient number, just one sentence scrawled in frantic handwriting. "The anchor is weakening." She smiles. "It's already too late." And above us, somewhere back in the hospital, I knew she had. Part 5, Through the Veil at First. I thought Priya was sleep-talking. She sat upright against the damp wall of the sub-basement corridor, her mouth twitching with words that didn't belong to her. But then I heard the voice. It wasn't hers. It was layered, aged, and hollow-like. It had traveled a very long distance through something broken. She opened the way, said. I knelt beside her. "Priya," but her eyes were vacant. Her lips kept moving. The voice did not stop. "Each night we walk again. Each night the gate cracks wider. The flesh remembers what the world forgets. The girl is not the storm. She is the door." The Jane Doe wasn't the origin. She was the bridge, a conduit, a breach point. And the time was almost 3:07 a.m. Again, I could feel it. A pressure in the walls. The air was growing heavier, thick with static. The lights dimmed in rhythmic pulses, as if breathing back in the journal room. I flipped through more of Greaves' old entries. His mind had clearly unraveled toward the end. Symbols overtook words. He'd started carving into the walls when the pages ran out. But one phrase kept repeating. "Burn the anchor or become the loop," over and over again. In ink, in charcoal, in blood, burn the anchor. What was the anchor? Priya stirred beside me. Her voice returned normal, raw, frightened. "She's moving," she whispered. I helped her up and we stumbled back toward the elevator shaft. The normal way out was gone, sealed, erased by the structure that was. No longer a hospital, no longer a building, but a machine for holding on to the dead. That's when I heard the gurney wheels faint, squeaking, getting louder. We froze. Light down the hall flickered on. There she was. Jane Doe, no longer in the ICU bed. She stood now, her hospital gown hanging off her frame, soaked in old IV fluid. Her eyes were bottomless pits of black. She smiled, and then her mouth kept going, splitting at the cheeks, too wide. Too wrong. She didn't walk, she glided. Like a marionette on strings, pulled forward by something invisible and hungry. The walls rippled around her, and with each step, the air grew colder. Wet, the tiles under her feet cracked and bubbled like skin under flame. I backed away, dragging Priya. Suddenly the world around us shifted again. The corridor became another place, entirely no longer hospital. Not quite asylum. The walls peeled back to raw concrete and rusted steel. Chains swung from the ceiling. Voices whispered from the vents, all of them in different tongues. And they were all saying the same name, Priya's. She screamed and bolted forward. And I followed. We turned a corner and there it was, a room we hadn't seen before, circular, lined with mirrors, each one cracked. In the center, a steel bed frame sat, bolted to the floor. Black scorch marks circled it like blast rings, dot in the corner. It's deep into the concrete I found the final set of instructions. Crude diagrams, ritual markings. A drawing of a woman on fire, limbs arched, mouth open in a silent scream. Around her were the same words: burn the anchor, burn the bridge, or repeat the hour until the soul is bled dry. I finally understood. Jane Doe wasn't the anchor. She was the bridge. The anchor. Was me, the doctor, the witness? Someone had to remember the veil opening. Someone had to loop the moment, so he could play again. Greaves must have burned his own anchor to escape the cycle. Or maybe he failed and the hospital took him. Either way, the choice was the same. Destroy the tether or become its vessel. I grabbed a scalpel from my coat, held it tight, looked at Priya. She shook her head, tears pouring down her face. Behind us, Jane Doe entered the room. She didn't run, didn't lunge. She just smiled, and the mirrors around the room shattered outward as if pushed by some invisible blast. I screamed, raised the blade, but not toward her, toward the journals. The desk, the bed, all of it the place of Tiptonal, of it the place of. Remembrance. The anchor wasn't a person, it was the memory, the documentation, every written word that kept the cycle alive, that gave the loop shape, that gave it meaning. I grabbed a bottle of ethanol off the wall and doused the journals. The blueprints, the floor markings. Priya struck a match from her emergency med kit. We watched it catch. The fire spread fast, and as it did, Jane Doe stopped moving. Her smile faltered. Her head tilted, curious. And then she began to scream, a deep, layered scream, hundreds of voices in one. The walls cracked. The ceiling peeled away into a sky of boiling ink. And then, silence. Just the roar of flames consuming a century of forgotten horror. I blinked. We were back in the hospital hallway, the regular one. No blood, no whispers, no Jane Doe. It was 3:06 a.m., and ticking forward, 3:07 came and went. The power stayed, the monitors beeped outside. The sun had begun to rise, but I knew better than to feel relief, because something still lingered in the mirrors, and I still remember her face. Part 6. The one who remains. I should have died. Everything in that hospital wanted me to, and maybe, in some way, I did. Because after the fire, after the screaming stopped, I opened my eyes and found silence. Not relief, not peace, just ... Stillness. I stood up from the scorched floor of room 306. The walls were clean, sterile, white, no scorch marks. No symbols, no Jane Doe. But something was wrong. Too quiet, too still. Like everything had been reset, but the atmosphere hadn't caught up yet. I stumbled into the hallway. It was the same floor I'd walked 100 times, and yet it wasn't. The shadows clung too long to the corners. The fluorescent lights buzzed at a lower pitch. The air felt heavier. I passed Nurse Ellie in the corridor. She smiled. Rough night. I stared at her. She didn't remember. None of them. Did Marcus Priya, the security guard who vanished? The janitor whose keys still had in my pocket. They were all just ... back. Like it never happened. But I remembered every detail. The flickering light stalked, the whispers from the vents. Jane Doe's smile stretching far too wide. I went back to the ER bay. The bed where Jane Doe had been. Empty. UNASSIGNED. No record, no chart, no evidence she'd ever existed. I checked the security system. Clean. Logs. No blackouts. No interruptions. No calls made. It was like the night had been erased or buried. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I've been watching the clocks. Every one of them is off. Not by much, just a few seconds, but they're slipping further each day. It's a difference. Grows, like time itself is recalculating. I don't know what I became that night, or what I saw in room 306. When Jane Doe touched my forehead, I left the hospital, not physically, but I saw. Beyond a place with no floor, no ceiling, just a black, shifting sea of souls. Faces screaming behind panes of frozen glass, eyes pressed against invisible walls, watching. Some of those faces, I recognize them. Doctors, nurses, grieves, others older, dressed in patient gowns from decades long gone. They reach toward me, not for help, but to pull me closer. And at the center of it all, a shape, not human, not quite awake. It pulsed. And with every beat, another scream echoed outward like a sonar. Ping of anguish. I felt it notice me. And in that moment, I understood. Jane Doe wasn't the beginning. She was the symptom. A doorway carved into flesh. Not the disease, just the carrier. And now, I carry it too. Because last night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the monitors flatlined again. All of them except mine. I stayed awake, heart pounding. Eyes open, I felt the pressure in the walls again. Heard the whispering begin. Only now, the voices know my name. Not spoken aloud, but reversed. Mouths shaping syllables backward in the dark. Anel. Lena. Backward. Again. And again, I don't know how many nights. I have left before they come through again. Maybe they never stopped. Maybe I just live in the seconds between each breach. And when that moment strikes again, when 3:07 returns and the world splits open, I won't be flatlining. I'll be waiting. And I don't know whether that means I've become the next bridge, or the anchor. But one thing's certain, the hospital remembers me now, and I can't leave. Because in this place, even the clocks are haunted, and I'm the one who remains. If you're still here, you made it through the night. But the story doesn't end at dawn. There are other rooms, other voices, and other shadows waiting just down the hall. So if you want more nightmares that crawl under your skin and stay, there. Hit that like button, share this with someone who sleeps too easily, and subscribe to Haunted Echoes, where every video is a door. And every door leads somewhere you shouldn't go. We'll be waiting.